All right, ladies and gentlemen, a formal welcome to our brand new Torah study series. Cue the applause. We'll have the applause track in the background. All right, so tonight, we are going to focus on this week's Torah portion, the Torah portion of Kedoshim. Now, we are deep in the book of Leviticus. If you know something about the book of Leviticus, you'll know Leviticus is, I'm going to say it's, in my opinion, and I don't like ranking things, but for me, within the 5 books of Moses, right within the Torah, it's definitely making the top 5. That was a joke, obviously. All right, just checking in, just testing the waters. So the book of Leviticus, though, all jokes aside, is, Jay, tell me when they're really bad, and I'll know to go down even lower.
They're getting really bad.
Listen, that's where we.
That's where we come in. That's why I pay the big bucks to hear you.
Exactly.
Start low and then slide.
Right. If I set the expectation really low. Yeah. Okay. So the book of Leviticus is one of the harder books of Torah to study. Bereshis, the first book of the Torah, Genesis. I think we all know that book. You got the beginning, the origin stories, Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, Abraham and Sarah, patriarchs, matriarchs, the 12 tribes, Joseph's drama, etc. Book of Exodus, hey, it writes itself. We've all seen the movies, right? It's the book of Exodus, great drama, Pharaoh, the Nile River, the plagues, the splitting of the sea, right? Exodus, splitting of the sea, Torah, and then you have the building of the Mishkan, sin of the golden calf, add that in for extra drama, and you're all set. The book of Numbers is great, but I can't count that high. I'm kidding. The book of Numbers is awesome because it talks about the journey. I think AC kicked in. Thank you. It had to get to like 80. So the book of Numbers is great. It's the 4th book. I'm skipping the 3rd for a second. We'll get back to it. Talks about the journeys of the Jewish people in the desert and all the trials and travails and the miracles that happen. Book of Deuteronomy is Moses' final last lecture, as it were, final remarks to the people over the last 37 days of his life, as he recaps the past 40 years together as a people, as a leader, etc. And he charges them before he passes away, and they go into the land of Israel without him. All of those are straightforward, and they're very much narrative based. Genesis, origin stories, Exodus, the Egyptian situation, Numbers, the desert drama, and Deuteronomy, the repeat. Hence the name Deuteronomy. In my limited Latin, I'll tell you that the prefix de, hold on, French, maybe, to repeat, it all works. It's better if you guys don't know Latin like me, because that way you'll just say absolutely and trust the rabbi. So here we go. Deuteronomy is to repeat. It's called Mishnah Tov. You did learn Latin. Uh-oh. Now in Canada? We got to talk about this later. All right. So great. So that's that. Now, the book of Leviticus stands as, it's not an anomaly, but it stands a little alone. It's right in the middle. It's the 3rd book, smack in the middle. And it's all about the service in the Holy Temple. Well, or in the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the precursor to the Holy Temple, the portable sanctuary that they took with them throughout the 40 years of journeying through the wilderness. Now, in the book of Leviticus, you have a discussion detailed. Oh my gosh, is a detailed discussion about the animal offerings, the sacrifices, the holidays, which animal, how many animals, sin offerings, peace offerings, all of this stuff. You have all of these conversations going on, and about the garments of the priests and the high priest and the rituals on Yom Kippur. That was last week. And then we have the Torah portion this week of Kedoshim, which has many laws in the Torah portion of Kedoshim. The one we're going to focus on tonight has to do with trees, which I love. I love the topic. Hey guys, is there something else going on? Supposed to be.
Or you're coming to the class.
Oh.
Yeah, but do y'all have cookies?
We can definitely offer that. If it's supposed to be here, we may have to just shimmy on over, but we'll figure it out. Have Torah will travel. Hey, it's been our national story.
I was just going to bribe them with cookies, like let us stay here, and then you can
absolutely. Cookies go a long way. So I want to focus tonight. We're going to focus on one episode, and that is the story of the trees. Story of the trees, the laws regarding trees, fruit trees, by raise of hand. Who has a fruit tree on their property? Any fruit trees? Fruit tree. What type of fruit tree?
Peach.
Peach tree.
Georgia Peach?
I used
Nice.
to have a friend who would give me peach.
Huh. I wonder who that friend is. I used to have a peach tree. Yeah, and that was great. Some years it would produce hundreds of peaches. Some years it produced 0 peaches. I could never figure out the pattern. Amy, you got a fruit tree? Wait, hold on. You got to unmute.
You had a finished mama's tree. Finished mama's.
Hold on. I asked you to unmute. No, it's not coming up.
Now?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just decided to start growing a lemon tree and an etrog tree, if you can believe it.
Wow. Nice. That's
Mm.
exotic. Let me know how that goes. I heard that the estrog trees specifically are a little bit tricky to figure out, but that could be gold. I mean, the price of estrogs. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is like,
It's a red heifer.
that is, yeah, that's a red heifer level of situation. So when you have a fruit tree, there are some very specific rules and regulations. It's not just so simple like have a fruit tree and that's it, enjoy the fruit. There are specific laws, and the law we're going to focus on tonight is called Arla. This is pretty much the entirety of tonight's conversation. It's about the laws of Arla, but let me give you a little bit of a wireframe framework for this conversation before we jump into the nuts and bolts. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the law of Arla, and I'll describe it. We're going to look at 4 different rationales for the law based on classic commentaries through the ages on 4 different levels. So we're going to look at a law in Torah, one of the mitzvot, one of the 613. We're going to analyze it through the lens of 4 different classic commentaries. We're going to ask a few questions on that. Then we're going to go to a deeper mystical place, and then we're going to walk away with a clear understanding of the mitzvah, number 1, and also number 2, lessons in our lives and takeaways. So now let's jump in with that kind of outline in mind of what we're going to do. Now let's actually do it.
Are we going to do pursuits, rush?
I think what I would like to frame it is Pshat, Remez, Drush. So the 4 levels of Torah interpretation, the simple level, the allegorical, the homiletical, and the mystical. You'll see when we do it, I think I'm gonna chart it like that. So let's jump in. Let me first introduce the mitzvah. The mitzvah is called Arla. Arla means blocked or banned. Okay. And the law goes like this. I'm going to tell it to you outside, and then we are going to read it inside. Some of you that ordered a book, I've already sent to your homes and you've received it. Dr. Maxie, yours is arriving tomorrow. Just FYI, I just checked it right before the class. If you did not order a book and want a book, let me know. You can also get it on Amazon. I can send you the link to that. You can get it directly. Or you can have it shipped here and you can pick it up from the synagogue, whatever you want. But that's as far as the book. I'm also going to put up the PDF for easy perusal. So here we go. I'm going to put up text 1 from the book Leviticus. Yaakov, I'll ask you to read in a moment, but first, let me tell you a little bit about the law. The law goes like this. If you are a farmer, a Jewish farmer, or a gardener, anyone that plants a tree, specifically a fruit tree, so there's some things you need to know. So first of all, if you're a farmer or gardener, there are other laws that apply that are not Arla. So I'll just very quickly go through a few of them. Number 1, you cannot mix. Yeah, please take it and pass. You cannot mix different species of plants together. Okay, so for example, no. Jewish farmers not to do that. It's called kilai karim. It's kilayim. It's like, you're not allowed to mix. Well, sort of. It's like not. I was going to use that example, like not mixing meat or milk or wool and linen together in the same garment. By the way, at the Met last night, the Met Gala, no wool and linen. Everyone. That was a joke. I have no idea. The point is that
probably
also correct. The point is that there are certain things Torah says. This is in the category of chok, divine decree. We can try to come up with reasons for it, but ultimately it's divine decree. God says don't mix certain things together.
That
And
doesn't mean I can't mix flowers in my garden.
you can mix flowers. You can't mix fruit like edible stuff. So I don't know what example, like like tangelos. I think it's called tangelo.
no
Right.
genetically modified.
Tangerine and what's the O? Orange? Tangelo?
Orange.
Orange? All right. or pomelo, whatever these things. So a Jewish farmer is not to do that. You can't mix things together and create something. Now, that doesn't mean you can't buy it. Loophole. I'm kidding. It's not a loophole. It's just the laws. You can't do it. You can buy it, but you can't do it. Certain things you can't even buy and use, like the wool and linen, meat and milk. But when it comes to mixing seeds, you can't do that. So if you want to get innovative as a farmer, you can't graft. You can't, when I say graft, you can't like graft in a thing to a thing and create a new thing. So that is number one.
Crossbreeding animals.
Crossbreeding animals also problematic.
Keep them.
Keep the boundaries that God set in the world, and that's that. Now, so that's just a bit of an aside. The law that we're talking about tonight is a little bit different. It's, let's say you have a peach tree. Let's say you have a lemon tree. Let's say you have whatever, an apple tree. Do apples grow in Georgia? Absolutely, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
North Georgia, LJ.
There you go. Oh yeah, we've been
You've been apple picking.
yeah, believe so.
You've been apple picking.
There you go, Apple Fest. So if you have a fruit tree, here's what you need to know. The first 3 years,
No fruit.
no fruit. Now, wait, it might produce fruit, can't eat the fruit, right? Cue up the MC Hammer, can't touch this. Right, it's off limits. You can't touch it. You can touch it. You can't eat it. No eating that fruit. And I believe not even selling the fruit, like no benefit from the fruit at all, garnish, nothing.
But the snake said we could eat it.
Well, we'll leave the snake aside for a second. Year number, that's the first 3 years. And the first 3 years goes by when you plant the tree, not when the fruit starts growing. You with me in the distinction? Again, if you plant the tree in let's go easy numbers, the year 2000, right? And why am I going back 23 years? Who knows? If you plant the tree, right? So that the clock starts then, year 1, year 2, year 3. After year 3, now we're in a different category we can do with the fruits. You don't wait till the first fruits come in and say, now the clock starts for 3 years of ban. The 3 years of Arla, no eating the fruits, start from the moment you plant it. Now, are you on your own objective clock? The answer is no. It goes Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. You with me? If you plant the tree, I'm going to get a little technical, but hey, that's what we're going to do. Then we're going to expand this. If you plant a tree within 45 days of Rosh Hashanah, okay, then that is still considered year 0. When Rosh Hashanah kicks in, that is year 1. Then year 2, year 3. If it's more than 45 days before Rosh Hashanah, that's already considered year 1. When you hit the clock on the new year, when you hit the calendar on the new year Rosh Hashanah, then that's already year 2. You with me on that? Yeah. If it's more than 45 days, that counts as year 1. Rosh Hashanah triggers year 2. If it's less than 45 days, then that's nothing. And when Rosh Hashanah hits, you then start the clock on year 1. All of that is relevant not only to Israel, but it's also relevant to diaspora. In the diaspora, this is very important. It's not just if you have a fruit tree, a Jewish farmer in Israel, a Jewish farmer anywhere in the world, these laws still apply. In the United States of America, right? These laws apply. Jewish law to this very day. With it, there's no temple, there's no Holy Temple in Jerusalem, it doesn't matter. First 3 years, no eating the fruits, no benefiting from the fruits, garnish, don't touch it. After the third year, different laws apply. What's the different law? Back in the times of the temple, the 4th year, they would take those fruits and bring them to Jerusalem and bring them to the temple and give them as a gift. They were meant to be as a holy offering. You were allowed to also eat them in Jerusalem, enjoy them, but it had to be in a specific context around the temple, in Jerusalem, etc. That is the 4th year. Okay, so 3 years, you don't touch them. The 4th year, it's holy. It's in a holy context. Okay? And in the 5th year, all the restrictions are gone. There's no issue with Jerusalem. You don't have to go to Jerusalem. You don't have to travel. Enjoy as it is. Now, what about nowadays? There's no temple anyway, so what are you going to do? In Israel, here's what they do. You ready? In Israel, they take the fruit of year 4, they redeem it for a coin, a silver coin, and they take the coin and they discard it as a ceremonial giving up of that fruit. Okay, in the diaspora, it's pretty much not done. except maybe if you have a vineyard, some people do it for a vineyard, subject of a halachic conversation. But be that as it may, what's important to know is simply this, that these laws, by and large, are conducted, are followed, even in the diaspora, and it's therefore very important to examine and explore this. We're going to start with text number 1. I'm going to share my screen.
Do all agricultural laws apply to outside the country, to Jews?
Outside of Israel?
Yeah.
No.
Just
Only specific ones, this one included. So, for example, laws of Shemitah, the sabbatical year,
Mhm.
that only applies, like not working the land for the 7th year on the objective 7-year cycle, only in Israel. That's a very good question. This law applies about the 3 years, that only applies in the land of Israel. Now, one second.
Borders,
I
cutting
see
your
a question. Yeah, that's only in Israel. What if you don't plant the tree, it just naturally started growing? Excellent question.
Oh, fruit tree.
Excellent question. Also, 3 years from when it starts growing. 3 years from when it starts growing, it starts on the clock as soon as it's grown. Now, what if you don't know how old it is? That I don't know. That I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. But it's basically the first 3 years of the tree's life. You don't eat the fruits. Now, let's read this inside. None of this is anywhere other than the Torah. I'm doing double negatives there. All of this comes straight up from the Torah, Leviticus, this Torah portion. Yaakov, please read loud and proud.
When you come to the land and plant a fruit tree, block its fruit from use. It must be blocked for 3 years, that may not be eaten. And in the 4th year, all its fruit will be holy. Bring it to Jerusalem in praise to God. Does that mean all the fruit has to be burnt?
Yeah, that's a good question. All of fruit or representation of the fruit. My understanding is I think it's pretty much all the fruit, but I would have to look that up and get more clarity on that. But I think it's pretty much that harvest is eaten or at least redeemed and eaten in Jerusalem. Again, you could also redeem it for cash, and then use the cash to buy other food and eat it in Jerusalem. But basically, that's the 4th year. So 3 years, it's forbidden. The 4th year, it is considered holy fruit, Batman. Now, that's text 1. We're going to explore now 4 rationales for this. What's the deal? Now, the simple understanding is, well, it's divine decree. It's a mitzvah. Doesn't need to have a reason. Sure, now that might be true on some level, but on another level, there's a lot of Jewish scholarship on every area of Torah. Certainly a mitzvah like this, very mysterious, has a lot of different commentaries. We're going to explore 4 classic commentaries explaining what is going on. Why are and the essential questions are, what's up with the first 3 years? Why can't you eat the fruit? You planted a tree because of the hate. Enjoy it. It's a peach tree, lemon tree, enjoy the fruit. Like, what's the problem? Why this ban? And why is the 4th year holy? What is actually going on? So we have here classic commentary. Sandrine, please read text 2a. We're going to have 2a, 2b, 2c, 2d, basically 4 texts, 4 different levels. Yaakov asked before, is this Pshat Remesh or Sod? I think it is along those lines. Here's a very simple, basic explanation from Nachmanides, the great Spanish Jewish philosopher. Take it away, please.
The reason for this commandment is to honor God from the first of all our fruit, whether from a tree or vine. We may not partake of them until we have brought 1-year crop to Jerusalem as a praise to God. However, the fruit of the first 3 years cannot be used as offering to God because they are inferior in number, flavor, and fragrance. Many trees barely even produce until their 4th year. We therefore wait to partake of the fruit until we bring the crop the 4th year, the first superior crop, to Jerusalem, where it is eaten in praise of God. It is also true that the 3 initial crops are very moist and unhealthy for consumption. For food that the Torah prohibits are also unhealthy for the body.
Thank you very much for reading that. Now, he says a few things, and I want to just break it down very quickly. It's very fascinating. Nachmanides, in his commentary on the Torah, often gets into the mystical stuff. This is not, I don't see this as mystical. He's explaining this on a very practical level. And essentially, again, I'm not saying anything that he didn't just say. I just want to just explain it for a moment and break it down. He's saying like this, that really the core of the mitzvah is that you should not be that the person, the farmer, is not to enjoy the fruits personally until they've given an offering to God from these fruits. As the first fruits should be given to the temple, or eaten in Jerusalem in a holy context, dedicated to God, or dedicated to that holy environment. Great. So then I'll do that year one. No, you can't do that year one or year two or even year three. Why? Because the fruits of the first 3 years of a fruit tree are inferior. So you don't want to say like, oh, great, I'll give these, I'll give the ones, I don't know what to call it, the inferior crop, I'll give to God, and then when it's kicking in, I'm ready to go for myself. So you wait 3 years. Get the work the kinks out of the system, as it were, get the good fruits, then bring it to Jerusalem, and then you can enjoy it in year number 5. So the first 3 years, they're out. Year 4, the fruits are robust. You bring it to the temple. In year 5, you enjoy it. That is Nachmanides. And he also says another thing. There's additional moisture in the fruits of the first 3 years. That's unhealthy. He doesn't explain why. I don't know. For whatever reason, he says it's unhealthy. And he says, as a general rule, if the Torah says you can't eat it, you should know it's for our own good. Okay, that's one. We're not going to spend more time on this. We have a ton of commentaries to get to. We have 3 more. So that's layer 1. I would call that pshat, a very simple explanation. The first 3 years are inferior, and therefore we pass it along. We don't pass it along to God. We let it go, and then God, and then us. Tova, please read text number 2. B, this is from the Shach al HaTorah in his commentary. And here we go.
Block its fruit from use. Do not do as the mother of the world, Eve, did, of whom it is written. She took from its fruit, Genesis 3:6, and did not wait 3 hours. The prohibition was delivered in the 9th hour, when there were only 3 hours left in the day. Correspondingly, we were instructed to refrain from eating the fruit of the tree for 3 years. For Eve failed to wait 3 hours. She and Adam transgressed in the 10th hour of the day. Had they waited 3 hours, Shabbat would have begun, and all its fruit would be holy, a praise to God.
So the Shach al HaTorah says here this is not the simple explanation.
No.
It's more of a remez, I would say, which is the next level of Torah interpretation. It's like an allegorical interpretation. He says like this: the 3 years corresponds to 3 hours. What are the 3 hours? The 3 hours that Eve should have waited before eating the fruit. God gave Adam and Eve the commandment not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
At all.
At all.
So what's this 3 hours?
So 1 second. But he only gave them the mitzvah in hour 9 of the day. And they only had to wait and it was only that day. It wasn't forbidden forever. It was forbidden until the end of the day. And they got it in 12 hours of the day, right? I mean, half a day. 12 hours. They got it in hour 9. That means they had 3 hours left. Hour 10, 11, and 12 to refrain from eating of the forbidden fruit. And they couldn't hold themselves back. The next thing you know, they're going after the fruit. So
it's not in the Torah that they.
Right. The Torah doesn't
This
say
is
the
commentary.
timeline. Correct. Correct. The Torah itself doesn't tell us which hour and specifically, the timeline. But our tradition tells us that they had they only had to wait 3 hours, and yet they couldn't. But the point is not to point fingers. The point is to say that the Torah is giving a tikkun. A tikkun means a way of correction, a way to fix the sin. How do you fix the sin? You fix the sin by waiting not 3 hours, but 3 years. So the 3 years correspond to 3 hours, and then the fruit is holy, like it would have been had they waited for 3 hours. That tree would have been not forbidden. Sorry, it would not have been forbidden. It would have been permitted and even holy. So that's the allegory. That's the symbolism. It's a symbolic thing. That's according to the Shach al HaTorah, which is a commentary. Now let's take a look at text C. Here we get to Maimonides, the very famous Rambam Maimonides, in his philosophical work, Guide for the Perplexed. He ups the ante and he says, basically, what's at stake in the first 3 years versus year 4 when it comes to the fruit tree is essentially the difference between monotheism and paganism. Here we go. I'm going to read this one. The ancient pagan priests ordained that the first crop of all trees that produce edible fruit be treated as such. A portion must be offered as a sacrifice to the gods, and a portion must be consumed in the pagan temple. They also declared that any fruit tree not treated this way would either die or lose its fruit, or its crop would be diminished, or it would be struck by disease. They basically put some voodoo curses on the crop, and they said you have to bring it as an offering and eat it in the pagan temple, or else blah, blah, blah. The Torah arose to counter this doctrine, and it instructed us to destroy all the produce of fruit trees for the first 3 years. This is because some trees bear their first crop after 1 year, some after 2 years, and others after 3 years. This is the nature of most trees that are grown by ordinary planting methods. God assured us that if we destroy the first 3 crops, year 1, year 2, year 3, the tree will produce plentifully, as is written, to increase for you its fruit. God then instructed us to eat the fruit of the 4th year in Jerusalem before God, to counter the practice of eating the fruit in a pagan temple. So Maimonides says the following. I'm going to stop sharing for a second just so I can see you guys. So Maimonides says, Rambam says, very simply, he says that there's a lot of representation, there's a lot of messaging and meaning behind all of this. He says, look, back in the day when pagan practices were prevalent, so what was going on is the pagan priest said, you got to offer the first fruits to the idols, to the gods, to the pagan gods. And then you're going to take some fruits and go to the pagan temple. So to counter that, Judaism, Torah says the first crop, which could either be year 1, year 2, year 3, depending on the tree. So we're just gonna assume all 3. The first crop, no one's gonna get. No idols, no gods, no pagan temples, garnish, nothing. You let that fruit just rot or whatever, you throw it away, no one eats it. Year 4, you bring it, you eat it in Jerusalem as an offering to God, as it were. And year 5, then it normalizes, then it's now edible. But again, all of this essentially, according to Rambam Maimonides in his Guide for the Perplexed, is essentially a response track, not to get into the Drake, Kendrick Lamar situation, but it's a response essentially to what the pagan practices were back in the day. Y'all with me? Great. That's 3.
I'm not with you with the Drake and Kendrick Lamar. You lost me.
It's not worth it. Don't worry. You shouldn't know such things.
Yeah, you're right.
You shouldn't even know such things. All right, we're gonna move on now.
Was that
Drush.
Was that the?
You see, that's the thing. That's where I struggle. The 4th one is definitely sod. What we're about to get to is definitely the mystical. Level 3 also seems like allegory, but it's not even allegory. It's kind of like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's pshat or remez or drush. I don't know this 3rd or Maimonides, but either way, let's hit the 4th. And Yaakov, you know what? We'll circle back around to you. Give me a second. Let's pull this up for our online crew. And this is text 2D.
Do not eat blocked fruit, as the passage states. It must be blocked for 3 years and may not be eaten. Leviticus. This is because spiritual forces of impurity rule over the tree for the first 3 years of its life. Thus, the fruit is blocked. Benefiting from fruit born of these impure energies is akin to benefiting from the blocked energies themselves, for the fruits of the portion and lot of these energies. However, after 3 years, the tree becomes sacred and pure.
There we go. So the mystics, and this is coming from Rabbi Yeshayahu Levi Horowitz, who is known as the Shalah HaKadosh. So he writes, he's a major Kabbalist. He writes the following. He says that the reason why it's called Arla means blocked, is because the energy, the spiritual energy of the fruits of a tree in its first 3 years are blocked. In other words, they are negative energies. So you don't want to eat of the fruit for the first 3 years because the energy, the life force, the vitality, right, of that fruit is of a negative sort. I'm going to throw some Kabbalistic terms at you, right? I don't expect you all to catch it. If you catch it, great. If not, you'll take my word for it. There's 2 types. There's something called klipa. Klipa means shell. And there's 2 forms of klipa. There are the shalosh klipot hatmeot, the 3 perfectly or purely impure shells. And then there is klipat noga, which means a translucent shell or a luminescent shell. So in Kabbalah, a shell, klipa, is anything that covers over kedusha, anything that covers over holiness. Okay, but there's 2 types of covers. There are covers that allow the light to come through, and then there's covers that totally block the light. Impurity, evil, negativity, etc., that emanates from the energy, from the life force of the shalosh klipot hatmeot, of the 3 impure klipot. Things that are permissible, that are kosher, as it were, come from klipat noga, from the neutral shells or from the translucent shell. It's essentially the difference between whether or not you can use something for a mitzvah or whether it's completely unusable. So essentially, Kabbalah says that the first 3 years of a tree's life, the energy of the fruit is coming from the 3 impure shells, 3 impure levels of klipa, right? 3 off limits energies, 3 years. That's it, corresponds. Year number 4, now it's holy, now it's a different level. But the first 3 years, it's coming from this blocked energy. Therefore, we are not permitted to partake in it. Okay.
So,
all of that-
Rabbi, does
Yeah.
this relate back to what you said about Eve, what we read earlier about Eve in Genesis? And so if they had waited the 3 hours, then once Shabbat came, it would have been permissible to have eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so is that sort of the same kind of concept being carried forward?
Yeah, that the energy of the tree, the energy of the fruit at that stage for 3 hours was the impure klipot. In hour 4 or after hour 12 of the day, in other words, after that day, it would have transitioned into a new flow of energy into the same fruit, which would have been permissible and or even a mitzvah, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure. But they didn't wait. And so a very simple example of this is chametz on Passover, right? You with me on this? On Passover, Cheerios, forget Cheerios, a loaf of bread, a kosher loaf of bread is no good on Passover, right? Why? Because on Passover, the energy is no good. The energy is transformed. So essentially what Kabbalah says, the first 3 years of a tree's life, the fruit it produces, the tree, we're not saying the tree is not kosher. We're not even saying the fruit is not kosher. It's that for the first 3 years, the fruit is channeling an energy that is inaccessible to the human condition in order to elevate it. We're meant to elevate things in this world. First 3 years, you can't elevate it, therefore don't touch it. Year 4, it's holy. Year 5, it's yours to do whatever you want with it at home, not even in Jerusalem, etc. Now, what we're going to do is let's advance the narrative. So we have year 1 through 3. Year 1 through 3, we don't eat the fruits. Either because, what was the first reason? Either because it's unhealthy, or it's it belongs to God, but it's inferior, so we wait till year 4, or because it's an allusion to Adam and Eve's their sin of eating of the tree in the first 3 hours, that they were banned those 3 hours, or it's because it was a pagan practice and therefore we're not doing the pagan practice, or because energetically, mystically, the energies aren't accessible to us. Any of those reasons. But after those 3 years, now it's a mitzvah. Now it's a mitzvah to eat those fruits in Jerusalem. Great. What about year 5? Let's continue. Sindrine, please read text 5. Give me 1 second, though. Let me first pull this up and take a look at this interesting verse. Okay? This is going to be text 3a, year 5.
5 or
3a, page 9, yeah.
And in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit to increase its produce for you. I am God.
So I want to break this down for a second. Thank you for reading that. In the 5th year, okay, year 1, 2, and 3, nothing. Year 4, Jerusalem. Year 5, you may eat its fruit. You may eat its fruit. Great. And then it says to increase its produce for you. To increase its produce for you. Well, what does that mean? So Rashi comments. Continue, please, in Dream text 3b. Please continue, Rashi.
The entire purpose of observing this mitzvah is to increase a tree's fruit.
Rashi says something a little bit bizarre. Rashi says, "Ha-mitzvah hazot shetishmeru tiyeh lahosav lachem tevoto." This mitzvah, which means the purpose of this mitzvah, is in order to increase the yield of the tree, to increase fruit. At first glance, we can struggle as to what Rashi's actually adding. Like, Rashi, the basic biblical commentary, what's he actually saying? But here's what we notice when we look at that Rashi, and I know I just took it away from the screen, but you saw it for a few moments over there. What Rashi is really saying is that the ultimate of this life cycle is year 5, not year 4. And that becomes very puzzling. You see, if you would do a cursory reading of this mitzvah, you would say, look, year 1 through 3, unholy, banned. Okay, off limits. Year 4, holy. Year 5, mundane. So what's the ultimate? Which is the ultimate year of the tree? The year of the fruit. What's the ultimate? Year 4, right? 1 through 3, can't touch it. Year 5, normal. It's mundane. Yeah, you cut up apples and put in your lunchbox. I cut up apples for my kids. Sorry, you don't have to cut it up. You're all of us adults here. You can just eat the apple. Okay.
Yeah, cinnamon.
Sorry. Slip of the tongue, huh?
They're good with cinnamon apples.
Also honey.
Mm.
Dip the apple in honey.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Why should be once a year? And then, but you would say that I think most of us would say, if I were to ask you cold, here's the scenario. Year 1 through 3, you can't eat it. Year 4, it's a mitzvah to eat it in Jerusalem. Year 5, it's yours to, it's you run with it. Which is the holiest experience? You would say you're number 4. And yet Rashi seems to imply, if you read Rashi, that the whole purpose of the mitzvah is year 5 and beyond. It's not year 4, it's actually year 5. The whole purpose of the mitzvah is lahosef lahem, to add, to increase, to add to the yield, to add to the produce, the one that you eat, not the at home, not the one that you take to Jerusalem. And our core question is, and you'll see the answer is going to be mind-blowing. The core question is, why is year 5 holier than year 4? Year 4 is literally holy fruit. Year 4 is literally Jerusalem fruit. Year 4 is literally pilgrimage. You go, you load up your bushels and your baskets, maybe that was the goal. You put them on the flatbed truck, as it were, on the wagon, and you go to Jerusalem, and I'm eating my fruits near the temple, inspired by the holiness, and that's how we're rolling. That would seem holier than year 5. And yet, to understand this, we're going to analyze a verse from Psalms. I think it's from Psalms. Okay? This is going to be a fantastic exploration. So stick with me. Right now, we're at a question about this whole year 5. Why is that Rashi seems to apply that's greater than year 4? And we're going to look at a verse and start putting together a philosophy that will give us an answer to this curious question. All right. Toba, please read this one. This is going to be text 4a from the book of Psalms.
And you are holy. You sit on the praises of Israel.
Let's break this down. Ve'ata kadosh, you are holy. We say to God. This is us talking to God. You are holy, number 1. Second half of the verse, you sit on the praise of Israel. Now, I will tell you, that's a bit of a weird expression.
Yep.
Sit on the praises. What does that mean? I mean, it almost sounds like a baseball reference. Oh, he was sitting on that fastball, right? Which means you're kind of waiting for it. Maybe it means that. Maybe it means that God is waiting for our praises. As we'll see, that's actually exactly what it means. But it also has other meanings to it as well. What we're going to do now is we're going to study this through the lens of Jewish mystical wisdom. Text 4b. Tova, please read this one as well. This is coming from a mystical analysis. Go for it.
The passage in you are holy. You sit on the praises of Israel means that God is inherently sacred and transcendental.
So let me pause for a moment. That God is inherently sacred and transcendental. That's the first half of the verse. You are holy. Ve'ata kadosh means you, God, are kadosh. You are holy. Let's continue. What about the second half? Sitting on the praises. Here we go.
To sit is a euphemism for descending from our natural height to a lower posture. God sits down. He allows himself to descend, to be drawn into our lives and engage with us when we praise him. Our praises and compliments stimulate his descent and cause him to reveal himself to us.
Fascinating. Fascinating. When does God, let's break down this verse according to Kabbalah, right? You are holy. Number 1, God, you are so great. You're way beyond anything we can fathom. And yet you sit on the praise of Israel. What brings you down into our reality, into our consciousness? It is when we praise God. It's when we give thanks. It's when we praise God that actually pulls God, like a vacuum pulls God into our reality and makes and creates that connection, which leads me to a story. I want to share with you a story of the Baal Shem Tov. Now, there is a band in Sandy Springs called the Baal Shem Tones, but don't be confused. That's not what I'm talking about, right? What's his name? That's Michael Cates. Yeah, Michael Only. Selena Michael.
Sang with them like once.
The what?
Sarah.
Yeah.
Sang with them once.
That's it. That's it.
There were 3, then there were 2.
All right. So the Baal Shem Tones, not the topic of the story, the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement, Hasidic master, a mystic, a scholar, a miracle worker, etc. The Baal Shem Tov had a practice for many years that he would go around the countryside. This is back in the old country, back in Russia, Europe, Eastern Europe. He would go around and he would meet people. And he would ask them, how are you doing? How's the business? How's the family? And he would wait for them to say 2 words. What's the famous Jewish answer?
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem. What does Baruch Hashem mean?
Yeah.
Thank God. Well, in English, we would say, thank God. Thanks God, right? Thank God. Baruch Hashem. Thank God.
Thanks God.
The story goes, here's the story.
I thought you were going to say oy vey.
Oy vey. Well, no.
Famous word.
No. He didn't want them to say oy vey. First of all, correct.
How are you doing?
That's-
My hemorrhoids.
Well, that's another 2 words, right? Look, the Baal Shem Tov would work with people until they, so here's the story about it. So he once went into probably a synagogue, and there was a man, an older man, sitting on a bench in the synagogue, wooden bench. He was a bench presser. In other words, he was sitting there all day. He was studying Talmud. He is what we might call a parish. You know what a parish is? A parish is someone who is a little bit removed from reality. When I say reality, I mean from, the reality that most of us live in. This fellow was sitting down all day, all night. Hello, hello, hello. And he was just doing his thing, just davening and learning. He was completely oblivious to the realities around him. He was a parish. It was a parish. Parish is an ascetic. It was somebody who was removed from the mundane. Baal Shem Tov comes over to him and says, "How are you? Was macht der Yid? How you doing?" No response. Right. So what does he do? He gets in his face a little bit more. "How are you?" I said, "How's it going?" No response. He does it again a few more times. Finally, the guy says, "Can't you see I'm learning? Can't you see I'm studying? What's going on? I mean, you're interrupting my studies. You're interrupting my Torah." Baal Shem Tov said to
Who
him,
are you, the Baal Shem Tov?
yeah, what is this? So the Baal Shem Tov responds something along these lines. I'm paraphrasing. He says, "And why are you withholding God's," I don't know if he said God's, I think he said parnasa, God's parnasa, his livelihood. Like what feeds God as well. Why are you holding back God's parnasa, God's sustenance? Why are you holding it back? Right? Implying that's when we say Baruch Hashem, when we say thank God, like we said in the previous text, right? That is what not only energizes God, as it were, but also brings God into our lives and into our consciousness. That's what joins. Sorry? Yeah, that's what creates the relationship. V'ata kadosh, despite the fact that you're so transcended, Yoshev, Tehilot Yisrael, you sit, you descend, you are attuned to and you wait for Tehilot Yisrael, our praise of you, of God. When we praise God, when we say thank God, Baruch Hashem, blessed be God, that is what God is waiting for. Now, take a look at this text. I'm going to share with you another text. This is going to be text number 5. And here's what the Baal Shem Tov responds. The Jewish people depend on the sustenance provided by the blessed God. Right? So we're dependent on God. Without God, we're toast. And on what sustenance does God sit? Right? We need God. So what does God need? In Psalms, King David writes the same verse, and you are holy, you sit on the praise of Israel. King David is asking, you Holy One, what is the sustenance on which you sit? What keeps you going, or what makes you go? The answer is on the praise of Israel. He sits, as it were, on the praise of the Jewish people when Jews praise him for the health and sustenance that he provides for them. In other words, when we acknowledge and we have gratitude and we verbally say, thank God, Baruch Hashem, for the blessings, that's what God waits for. That's what gives God the energy, again, as it were. And in reward for these praises, the blessed God provides us with children, life, and plentiful sustenance. Basically, the glue of the relationship is the Baruch Hashem, is the thing. Now, that's the story. That's how the story goes. The Baal Shem Tov, again, just to recap the story very quickly before we ask a question on the story. But to recap the story, we have this fellow who's studying all day and learning all day, well, the same thing, and praying all day, and totally removed from reality. Baal Shem Tov comes in space and says, "Hey, how's it going?" I was like, "What plan? Like, what are you saying? What are you doing?" Baal Shem Tov explains to him that indeed God is waiting for your Baruch Hashem. That gives God sustenance. That, again, as it were, that gives God the energy, and that's what brings the blessings down here. When we acknowledge and when we express gratitude, that's what fuses and makes that relationship. Simple question. My question. Are you telling me that this guy who was studying Torah all day and praying all day, he like lived in the synagogue.
Because praying is praise too.
Right. You're telling me that he wasn't connecting with God? Like, you tell me that someone who's out shopping in Kroger or whatever it is, and then you catch him with a Baruch Hashem. Oh, great. Acknowledging God in the moment, even while shopping. That's a good thing, right? Good. But the guy is studying and praying anyway. So why does he have to say Baruch Hashem? Again, if you want to go to the farmer on the field, about Shem Tov is going to the farm, and the guy is milking the cows and getting the eggs from the chickens, and I'm not a farmer. That's the extent of my farming knowledge. Whatever, right?
Milking the chickens.
Cleaning hoofs. I don't know if these videos pop up. What?
You said milking the chickens.
Anybody see that? Is that it? And I lost a rabbit hole. Sorry?
You did say milking the chickens, right?
I didn't say milking the chicken. I don't think I said that. I think I know more, a little more farming than that. Come on. Right. So if you go to a farmer and you ask the farmer how's it going, and you give space to the farmer, be able to think about his or her life and think about the blessings and then acknowledge God. Oh, wow. What a moment. What a breakthrough. Middle of the day, middle of the work. You got to Baruch Hashem. That's what God's waiting for. However, if you tell me that you're dealing with someone who anyway is studying Torah, anyway is praying, right? So why do you need that guy to say Baruch Hashem? The guy's already locked in to holy things. You guys with me on the question? Mm-hmm. Let me read a few texts just to keep things honest. Let's read a few texts, okay? Let's take a look-see at text numeral 6a. Okay, text 6a. Yeah, here's the virtue of Torah study. You ready? The human lives on physical bread. The sustenance of our bodies is secure when we digest and absorb food into our bodies. Similarly, the Torah is called life-nourishing food for the spiritual soul. We need to digest and absorb our Torah studies into our souls and feel it even in our flesh. This binds our souls to God, to be attached to God and be absorbed by God. Basically, what we're saying is that Torah is sustenance, right? Remember, like Ted Lasso, football is life. Here we would say Torah is life, baby. That's it. Torah is life. Torah is like mazon, lechem, gashmi. It's like physical bread for the soul, it's spiritual bread. So the guy's studying Torah. What else do you want from the guy? You need a Baruch Hashem from him. He's studying Torah. He's digesting, divine wisdom. Text 6b. The Shalah again says the following about prayer. The attachment of the divine to the Jewish people is forged by the sacrifices that are offered in God's holy temple. This is akin to the joining of body and soul that is achieved by the food that nourishes us. In other words, the sacrifices, today we don't have sacrifices, today we have prayer. Prayer, which takes the place of sacrifices, is again the idea of joining us together with God. It's the energy that sustains us. So again, if this person, again, I'm asking a question on the story of the Baal Shem Tov. If this guy was studying Torah and praying, so why was the Baal Shem Tov interrupting him with the Baruch Hashem? And the answer, my friends, is not only blowing in the wind. The answer is one of the most important truths of Judaism that we could ever know and ever be revealed to us. And that is that as special as it is to go to a synagogue and to study Torah, and literally we're doing that right now, and as special as it is to open up a prayer book and pray to God, or pray from our heart, open up our hearts and pray to God, and as special as it is to do a mitzvah, and as holy as all those experiences are, and as much as they connect us to God and God with us, there's one thing that stands even higher than all of that. And that is taking the stuff of the world and elevating it to God, taking the mundane matter of the world and making it holy. In other words, if I had to break this down, I'd break this down, but down like this. There are three domains of reality. There are three spaces: the unholy, the holy, and the stuff in the middle. Let me explain. There are the things that are forbidden. Those are spiritually evil. Those are out. Then there's the stuff that's the stuff of mitzvot, Torah, prayer, mitzvah, candlelighting, Shabbat, kosher, all that stuff, right? All the mitzvah stuff. And then there's the rest of life that lies somewhere in the middle. The rest of life that's in that neutral ground, right? Lunch on a Tuesday afternoon Mitzvah, sin, probably not either. Probably somewhere in the middle. The question is, in that experience, are we doing it with a higher intentionality? Are we doing it for a greater cause? Are we doing it for a higher purpose? And that is what creates the most radical change. When we abstain from something unholy, we didn't change anything. When we engage in something already holy, again, we're tapping into the holiness, but we didn't change anything. But when we take something from the middle ground, something from the neutral pile, and we move it over to a holy pile, that is an accomplishment that we've done. And that is ultimately the purpose of creation. It's something that I believe probably everyone here has heard before, has studied before, and it's one of the ultimate truths of Judaism and most surprising truths. Take a look at text 7a. I want to contextualize the very first commandment, which we spoke about, the mitzvah that God gave to Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good, tree of knowledge of good and evil. Take a look at text 7a. Here's the original. Look at this. God instructed Adam, saying, you may eat from any tree in the garden. However, you may not eat from the tree of knowledge that has good and bad or good and evil. Take a look at this. Think about this question. What's the very first mitzvah that God tells Adam and Eve? The very first mitzvah is vis-a-vis what? Lunch. What to eat for lunch? You got to be kidding me. That's the very first thing. Why not? The first thing you should know is that I am God and there's a purpose. Here's how to pray. Here's how to meditate. Here's some good things to do. No, the first thing is about what you're going to eat. You kidding me? The first mitzvah is about food? Yeah, that's the point. The Midrash says, Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Nachman, taught, from the moment that God created the world, he desired to be at home in the lower physical world as he is in the higher spiritual world. God wanted a space down here in the bowels of this earth. Therefore, he created Adam and instructed him, you may eat from any tree in the garden, or you may not eat from the tree of knowledge that has good and bad. In other words, the first mitzvah is about food. Why? Because that is the stuff, the bread and butter of existence. Literally, right? The stuff that makes up this world is food and work and the other stuff that we do. So yes, to be in a synagogue and to study Torah and to pray is holy, and no one will ever take that away. To pray is holy, 100%. 1 second. To pray is holy. To study Torah is holy. But when the Baal Shem Tov comes to this guy and says, how's life? How's the family? How the kids? How's the work? How's the business? How's the mortgage? How's everything going? Right? How's the car? And the person thinks for a moment and says, Baruch Hashem, you know what's happening? The person's connecting their mundane life with something higher. To connect the spiritual with the spiritual, it's already spiritual. You're not doing anything. Again, I'm not advocating not doing spiritual things, but you're not innovating. But to take the real world as a word and connect that with spirituality, connect that with God, that is something that is remarkable, and it's the purpose of our being. And so again, the Baal Shem Tov interrupted this man's Torah study, interrupted his prayers. I don't know if he was praying, but definitely studying Torah, interrupted him to ask him about his life. How's life going? He wanted him to say Baruch Hashem about the physical stuff, about the mundane stuff. Because it's when we connect the mundane with Hashem, with God, it's when we say Baruch Hashem, not only about the mitzvahs, but about the regular stuff, that's when we make an impact. That's when we fuse material and spiritual. The material of the world with the spirituality of God, and that's what makes the greatest difference. Now, with all of this in mind, we can understand why it is that the 5th year of fruits is actually the highest. Year 1 through 3, forbidden. Year 4, it's a mitzvah. Year 5,
It's the mundane.
it's mundane.
Impure, holy, mundane.
Now we're talking. Oh, it's mundane. Great. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it now? Again, year 1 through 3, it's off limits. So it's off limits. Year 4, it's holy. It's holy. You didn't create unholiness or holiness. But year 5, now it's yours. Now it's yours. Now what are you going to do with it? Now you have that fruit. Are you going to use it? Are you going to use it for a good purpose or a lowly purpose? Are you going to use it to share with others? Are you going to use it for Shabbat, for a festival? Are you going to say Baruch Hashem? Thank God. Or are you going to perhaps employ it for selfish purposes or degrading purposes? But year 5 is where you and I make a difference. Year 5, when it's ours, that's when it's neutral. That's when the magic can happen. Doesn't automatically happen, but that's when the magic can happen. I want to share with you a story that I think captures this very well. There was a man, his name was Professor Velvo Green, scientist from Minnesota, from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he was a man who did not grow up religious at all. I think he knew some Yiddish growing up. His parents taught him some Yiddish, but he was not born to a religious family, was not raised in an observant home or community. And the Chabad rabbi in Minnesota, Rabbi Moshe Feller, who's still with us, may be healthy and live a long life. So Rabbi Feller met with him a few times, and they developed a relationship. And through their relationship, he encouraged him to increase his Jewish observance. The story goes that the first time he was trying to meet with him for a while, for many, many months, he couldn't get him. The rabbi was trying to meet with the professor. He couldn't meet with him. Every time he called, they assumed he wanted a donation. So they said, all right, we have a check waiting for you. He was like, no, I want to meet with the professor. They couldn't fathom that he actually wants to meet with him. Eventually, he meets with him, but it was so late in the afternoon that in the middle of the meeting, Rabbi Feller gets up and says, I'm so sorry, but please excuse me, but I need to pray. Mincha, the afternoon prayer. This professor is thinking, this guy's been waiting 6 months to meet with me. And now in the middle of the meeting, he's now for the rest of the meeting time, he's davening mincha on the corner, the afternoon prayers. The rabbi finishes, he says, sorry, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to speak more, but it was nice meeting with you, and that's it. He was so impressed with this rabbi who was so committed to his religion that he got excited. He developed a relationship. Anyway, story goes like this. Here's the story that I wanted to tell you. Story goes that Professor Velvo Green, takes a flight, and before the flight, he had to fly somewhere, and it was, I think, a connecting flight. And so before the flight, somehow the rabbi convinced him to order a kosher meal. This was in 1960. To order a kosher meal. Velvo Green didn't keep kosher, but he wanted to make the rabbi happy, so he ordered a kosher meal. So he's on the plane. The stewardess comes by and gives him the meal, and it's not the kosher meal. So now he's like, now what do I do? He's not kosher, but he ordered the kosher meal. So now he's like, all right, let me make the rabbi proud. He says, excuse me, but I ordered a kosher meal. That was very uncomfortable for him to say, but he says it. He gets the words out. I ordered the kosher meal. She says, okay, thanks for letting me out. She goes back. She comes back a few minutes later and says, we looked high and low. We can't find the kosher meal. Can't find the kosher meal. So now he has a conundrum. Now he has a quandary, right? Does he just eat the meal? Because anyway, he's not kosher. Or he doesn't observe kosher consistently. Or does he hold the line? He decides to hold the line. He says, okay, that you could take away this meal. And he immediately regrets that decision because he's very hungry. And he eventually lands, and he landed in Chicago on the way to somewhere else. And he's in Chicago, and he is not only hungry, but he's so annoyed at the rabbi at this point. He's so resentful of the whole thing. He regrets that they ever met this guy, because now it's where he's hungry and he's being someone he's not, ordering kosher meals, rejecting non-kosher. What is happening to his life now? Who is he? Who is this man? Where is Dr. Green? Will the real Dr. Green please stand up? Please stand up. Please. What is actually happening here? It's Rap Tuesday. So what is happening here? Right? And that's Detroit, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, some shady. Right. So what is happening, right, with him? He calls the rabbi from a payphone. This is before cell phones. Can you imagine a world before cell phones? He calls the rabbi. He says, Rabbi, I'm going in a moment. I'm going to get in line and buy a non-kosher hot dog. He's screaming on the phone. He's like, I am so upset. I'm letting you know before I do it, I'm buying a non-kosher hot dog. Rabbi Moshe Feller says to him, he says, Professor Green, we've had many conversations on the meaning of Judaism, philosophical conversations, scientific conversations. I want you to know that the meaning of Judaism is not buying that non-kosher hot dog. That's the entire meaning of Judaism. The rest is commentary. And it hit him like a ton of bricks. Everything else is theory. Everything else is theory. The bottom line is, when you're hungry, and you're in an airport in Chicago, and all that's in front of you, well, I mean, there's also water and apples, but right, and all you want is a non-kosher hot dog. But you say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to buy the non-kosher hot dog. That's the essence of Judaism. Year 1 through 3, it's out. Year 4, you're in Jerusalem. Year 5, you're living your life. You're living your life. The question is, at this point, what choices are we making with the stuff that we have, with the life that we're living, in the life that we're living? That's the question. By the way, postscript, Professor Green, from that moment on, went kosher. That was the turning point of his life. That was the turning point. His entire that almost that manifestation of the anger and resentment was the last vestiges coming out. And the rabbi said, you should listen. You can be upset, but this is, just so you know, this is Judaism. Judaism is not Yom Kippur, is not praying like an angel, is not wearing white, and is not bowing down to the ground, you know, by Nachman Korim and the part of the prayers. It's not even about dancing with the Torah and Simchat Torah. It is also that. But Judaism is primarily those moments. And you may be alone in your own home and no one's around. It's those moments where you make those choices. How am I going to live my life? Not what am I going to do in shul? Not how am I going to hold a prayer book, but how am I going to live my life? And so my blessing for us all as we wrap up tonight's class, the inaugural Torah Studies 5784 Season 3 class. My blessing for all of us is that we should all be inspired from the mitzvah, from the trees, to make like a tree. No, I'm kidding, right? To remember the power of year 5. Remember the power of the little acts that we do in our lives that may seem mundane, not a holy experience. I'm not in Jerusalem. I'm not by the temple. I'm at home. I'm picking my apples. I'm eating my lunch. Like God said to Adam and Eve, make lunch holy. Make lunch holy. Make the meal in the airport holy. It's not only about food, by the way, even focusing on food, but it's about living an elevated life in our regular day-to-day activities. That's the key. That's the entirety of Judaism, and the rest is commentary.
So those little acts can take down a big tree.
Ooh, I like that. I like the axe. All right, good. Thank you all for joining me tonight for Torah Says. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you'll never look at fruit trees the same again, knowing what we know. So tonight, just to recap, we looked at the mitzvah of Arla, and we looked at it from a technical perspective. What is it? 3 years, no fruit. 4th year, Jerusalem. 5th year, it's yours. We looked at that from 4 different levels of classic Torah commentaries, and then we expanded it to understand better why the 5th year, as Rashi says, that's the purpose of the mitzvah, is year 5. Why is year 5 so special? Because that's when we chart the course of our lives, when we bring God into our real spaces. We don't retreat to the safe spaces. We live divinely in our own spaces. All right. Thank you all for joining me tonight. And tonight, yes, it is tonight. Any questions or comments? We are open for business. I do want to make a few quick announcements. Announcement number 1, tomorrow night, everyone is invited to a very special event. This is called Faces of October 7th. We have with us, he's flying in tomorrow. We have an Israeli, his name is Gal Cohen Solal. He lives in Kibbutz Be'eri, on the border with Gaza, right near where that was the area where the Nova Music Festival took place. His home was literally surrounded by Hamas gunmen. His home was shot up and shot through. He miraculously survived. He hid in his safe room for close to 30 hours. Okay, if you know, with his wife and 3 kids, and his youngest was under the age of 3.
Yeah.
They had to keep the kid from not crying. Okay, it's a story for the ages. It boggles the mind, and it shatters the heart. It's a story of the horrors of the day. It's a story of profound healing. It's a story of tragedy, but also of strength and resilience. In other words, it's the story of our people, but a recent story of our people. And I think, you know, as we just coming from Yom HaShoah, and we're preparing for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, you know, days that where we think about the bigger themes of our people, the Holocaust, but also connected with Israel and rebirth and safety and security. I think these stories, and also considering what has been going on the last several weeks and the protests and the narratives literally switching in front of our eyes, I think it's more important than ever to bear witness, or to hear the witness testimony of someone who lived through October 7th.
Yeah.
So I have not I have not been face to face with a survivor October 7th yet. It's been 7.5 months. I personally have not. I think many of us haven't, or maybe many of us have. So I am profoundly, I've been working on bringing a speaker for several months now. We got word about maybe a week and a half ago that we were able to secure someone. We didn't have a lot of advance notice. So I encourage everyone who can come out tomorrow night to come out and meet Gal and hear his story and carry his story in your heart, share it with others, because this is not only his story, but it's also our story. It's a story of our people, our land, and our time. So come out tomorrow night, 7:30. Because it's a Jewish event, we're going to open up with sushi and wine, but it's really about the speaker. 7:30 reception, 8 o'clock. We have the program again, Faces of October 7th. Please come out and join us. One more announcement. This is happening next Wednesday, May 15th. Our brand new JLI course, Decisions of Fate. This is our brand new Jewish bioethics course. We're going to explore 4 different cases of medical ethics from a Jewish perspective. Not only fascinating classes intellectually and philosophically and Jewishly, but also cases and questions that have real life implications, ramifications. So guidance that we can all use. It's also approved for doctors to provide medical credits. Literally, it's approved by it is approved for giving CME, continuing medical education credits, as well as lawyers, CLE credits, state of Georgia. So if you're a doctor or a lawyer, or if you know of any doctors, lawyers, or
Dentist?
not that, I don't believe dentists. No, this is CME and CLE, those specific credits. It is approved for those professions, and it is approved from Moses at Sinai, I'm assuming, to give Jewish credits. So you get Torah credits, right? Don't pass up your Torah credits for this study. So that is Decisions of Fate next week, Wednesday, 12 p.m. noon. That's literally redundant. So we have a noon class and a 7:30 p.m. class, both live and on Zoom. Get your credits, get your Torah study. And that's all my commercials for tonight. All right. But tomorrow night, an important event, and Wednesday, and Torah studies. Share the word, share the gospel, mixed metaphors. So, all right, any questions, comments?
I don't know, for like that girl, like candle at 3, and it's more of Rabat.
Yeah.
And like boy, cover her at
Mhm.
3. Is it
Oh.
related with the 3?
I want to repeat your question. Sandrina's asking a great question. We see the number 3 years as being a significant age. So Chabad has a custom, and some others do also, that young girls begin cutting. Nope. Young girls begin lighting Shabbat candles. I'm mixing stories. Young girls begin lighting Shabbat candles at the age of 3, and boys get their first haircut at the age of 3. The 3-year-old, the boy haircut thing definitely is connected. Definitely. That's why we cut the hair. It's almost like that first hair we get rid of. The first 3 years of hair, you don't shave it down. I mean, but like the first 3,
right?
huh?
We mail it to Jerusalem.
No, that's year 4. Kidding. So no, but the first 3 years, it's almost like the hair, it's out. We get rid of the hair. That's the first 3 years. We didn't touch the hair like the Arlo. You don't pick the fruits. You just let it go, and then you cut it, and that's it. So that's akin. As far as the 3-year-old for candle lighting, I haven't heard of a connection specifically to the Arla thing. I think in that regard, it's 3 is it's one of the stages of chinuch, of education. It's a stage where the child begins to understand certain things that they couldn't understand earlier. And so it's an age of, training. Also for boys, it's become an age where you start wearing a kippah, it's tzitzit, you start wearing that sort of thing. So boys get there, they start coming into their mitzvah. Girls start adopting their mitzvah. Obviously, safety first, fire, consult your local safety batches, whatever it is.
Fire marshal.
But that's fire marshal, exactly. Yeah, but it definitely with boys, it's brought down there. It's connected.
What is the connection between a tree and a human?
Well, so there is a verse in Deuteronomy that says that a man is the tree of the field. Now it's said over there in the context of a rhetorical question, but it also can be read as a statement. There is a likeness between people and trees. I mean, there are many, many different angles on this. Trees have roots, so people have roots, right? We have foundation. Branches, the fruit, how we extend the fruit that we share, the mitzvahs that the goodness that we share with others, are like the fruit that we bear and that others enjoy.
But hair is not considered impure. I mean, is it for the same reasons or just a different reason completely?
It's a custom. It's not like a biblical mitzvah.
Exactly.
Is it based on somewhat of, yeah, it would be interesting to look at all the nuances of the origin, but there's definitely that connection is drawn in sources.
Yeah.
That connection is drawn between the tree and the hair. By the way, we're coming up to Lag BaOmer in a few weeks, 33rd day of the Omer. Just so you know, today was day 14. Tonight we count the next number. I'm not going to say it until I say the blessing and counting. So today was 14. Day 33 is a very special day, spiritual day, and many have the custom of doing the first haircut on Lag BaOmer, which this year is on a Sunday. So it's actually a very convenient day. Why? I don't know. I don't know that haircut-wise Sunday is any better, but it's a nice day to have a celebration, go to the park, have a festival, have a bonfire or barbecue, and party. So that is that. Stay tuned for more information about that.
That's a Sunday of Memorial Day.
Oh, is it Memorial Day Sunday? Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Oh, so that's really, is it? Let's see.
It's May the 30th and 31st is the weekend of Memorial Day.
Is what?
No.
It's 20.
29th.
Is it really?
29th.
No, it would be the 4th. Hold on.
29th.
I think Lag BaOmer is the day
27th.
before.
27th is Memorial Day.
Memorial Day weekend.
And you're right, the 26th, correct. The 26th is Lag BaOmer, and the 27th, that is Memorial Day weekend, correct. Yeah. All right. So what does that mean for all of us? I don't know. What it also means is that Nas and Solish, yeah,
It's his haircut.
his
His birthday,
his due date, I want to say it was going to be Lag BaOmer, but he went way past that. 20 years old, which is almost impossible because I'm basically 20 in my head.
But you say back in the day, like it's like 50 years ago.
I do say back in the day because I don't know what's going on with time at this point.
Ari, wasn't he
Yes.
born near Shavuos?
Yeah, he's born closer to Shavuos, right? Yes. Yeah, he was late. I don't know, late. He was on time, but
Hello.
later than we
Bobby,
expected.
Bobby knows her grandson's
That's
birthday.
right. I will say also, Mom, that his upshernish when he was 3, that's why was Memorial Day weekend. That year it was Memorial Day
That's
weekend.
why that's why you got mixed up.
That's why I would call it fondly that weekend was his haircut. And we had, that was great. Reuven Michal from Chai Peking on the grill. Yeah, that was great. Good times, great oldies.
Hazaku Baruch, Rabbi. Danny, it's great seeing you.
You too. Thanks
hope
for
you're-
the invitation.
I hope you
So
enjoyed
Danny,
the program.
are you in Augusta?
Yes, I am.
Because I was noticing the masters behind you as your backdrop.
Oh,